wild tapir eating something. I can't tell what it is, but
It's this one?
yes, it could be. This is very similar to the temperate rainforests of the Pacific Northwest in the United States and in Canada. The only difference is you'd have to put venomous pit vipers and jaguars and tapirs over there. Very different suite of plants and animals. Both places the hiking can be pretty tough, especially when everything's slick and you're sliding all over the place. The substrate here is very much a clay base, so when it starts getting wet, and it's wet all the time, you can slip a lot. Absolutely stunning in terms of the beauty though, so worth it. Wild tapir eating something. I can't tell what it is, but he's searching for all kinds of food back in those ferns. He probably weighs over 500 pounds, or maybe over 400 kilograms even. Mira, hay dos. There's two of them. That other one's been there for the last 15 minutes. We didn't even see it. Is it a baby? Unbelievable. I've never seen anything like this. This is my first time seeing a tapir in the wild. We were just watching this one, the big one in the front, for the last 15 minutes. Had no idea there was another one right down there behind it. Unbelievable. Look how beautiful those things are. Not a scratch on these. They live here in the mountains and the jungle in Costa Rica. They have to survive living around jaguars and pumas. How amazing is that? The ground here is like a sponge, and there's some sections we walk through that are almost more like a swamp, but just saturated right now with water. My friends in Southeast Alaska would be right at home here. Some kind of beautiful flowers popping out in the middle of all this green. But this is thick stuff. Luckily we have a trail that we're going off of right now, but if you went off trail into that, you could have a really hard time. And if you get turned around, this would not be a good place. If you go the wrong direction, you got, I don't know, more than 20 miles you'd have to go to make it out of the jungle if you went in the wrong direction, heading towards the Caribbean. And you could wander all over the place before you get back on track. It gets pretty cold up here. We stopped right at the summit. We were all sweaty and soaked from the rain, and just after 5 minutes I already felt very chilly. at just over 2,500 meters elevation. So we're talking close to 8,000 feet, give or take. And yeah, things change really quickly once you cover that much of elevation, and especially when you're wet and everything is soaked. So the best thing to do until you're gonna set up shop in your camp is make sure you get some food in you, right? You need electrolytes if possible. Right now I feel my thighs cramping up because I have not done a good job of hydrating. And right now I don't want to stop, which is probably not the smartest idea, but I know we've only got another hour. So we'll see how I'm feeling. But snacks give you a little bit of an energy boost, and also it keeps you warm when the chills are trying to set in. A little bit of food can go a long way. It's like putting wood inside of a furnace, letting that thing burn. You can generate a lot of heat, a lot of core body heat just from eating little snacks here and there and from staying hydrated. So, but other than that, if you're not moving and you're not snacking, you could absolutely die from hypothermia up here. And it doesn't seem like the kind of place where people would die from hypothermia. When you talk about Costa Rica, typically people are thinking about really warm tropical climates, hot and sunny days, sometimes down on the beach, although they get plenty of rain also. But up in the highlands, it's a whole different ball game. So be prepared to be wet the entire time, and then have your dry clothes packed, have your dry sleeping bag packed, everything in a dry bag. I have everything in dry bags inside of a backpack that is also covered in a little bit of a basically rain cover from an old tent. But I do not want to get there and have wet stuff, so I'm trying to avoid that at all costs. But once you get into camp, get into dry clothes and then hang your stuff to dry, and then be prepared to put on wet stuff in the morning if it's not all ready to go, and then generate heat from moving around. Very cool place though. I mean, totally worth it. Look at the ground. Everything is just layers of moss. Just soaked. I don't know if you could hear that, but it sounded like either thunder or wind moving through here. Might have even knocked a tree over. That's another thing you got to be careful of up in here. We did hear a tree fall earlier, and although I wouldn't say it's a high probability that you could get killed by something like that, it is possible and it happens to people. So, and you also got, even if it's not a whole tree, you've got things falling out of trees. So like, look at this giant bromeliad here. That just is something that just fell from the canopy, right? So if that conked you on the head, it could do some damage. And there's some other bigger pieces. There's branches, right? I mean, look up in there. You got all kinds of stuff that can fall down. And especially with all this water, there's constant decay of all the branches. And, you know, you can have all kinds of stuff falling down. I wouldn't say it's something to like be highly concerned about, but it's something to at least keep in the back of your mind, right? Yeah, I'm hearing something. It sounds like maybe trees are falling, but it's really hard to tell with all this rain because it's so loud. Now, there are a few species of pit vipers up in here. There's a couple of species of Bothriechis. They're these really cool arboreal pit vipers. bright green color, one of them green and black, and the other one can be a mix of different colors, all different shades of reds and yellows and greens. There is a Seraphidian. It's related to the jumping pit vipers somewhat, and some of the other stuff is further down slope, like the terciopelo, or the fertilance is another name. They call it nauyaca in Mexico. Or if you want to go by the scientific name, the genus is Bothrops. There's Atrox and Asper. And then you got Bushmasters, Lachesis. Those are further down slope as well, and those are the largest venomous snake here. Bothrops are the second largest. And you definitely don't want to get bitten by the first three that I mentioned if you're up in these cloud forests, even though they're not as bad as the others that are down lower in terms of venom potency. If you're 12 miles away and you have to hike through all this stuff, you could be in real trouble. Luckily in Costa Rica, they do have anti-venom in a lot of places. And just look at that. How cool is that? Absolutely beautiful. They do have anti-venom in a lot of little hospitals, even in little towns. But still, if you're 12 miles away from anything, that's a long way to go, right? Other dangers, other things to think about. There are certainly some insects, right? Ants. We walked through thousands of ants that were making their way up the trail, and at one point we didn't pay attention to where we were stepping. We stopped to look at a little green toucan, and all of a sudden they were crawling up our legs, right? So we had to kind of jump around and dance around a little bit to get all these things off before they started biting us. But there were tens of thousands of them, and you could be having a bad day if you stop in the wrong place for too long. Now, falling, right? You hear that? That's thunder for sure. And I was going to talk about falling, but I guess I'll talk about lightning real quick. I guess that's my cue. Lightning could be a risk. I mean, it's going to strike the tallest things on the landscape. We just crossed the Continental Divide, so we were at the highest point just 15 minutes ago. We're still pretty high, and there's a lot of tall trees. But the good thing is when there's a lot of tall trees, we're not just picking one tall tree in the middle of a field, so the probability is at least a little bit lower than it's going to pick the tall tree next to you. So something that you should think about, and try not to be stuck out in the middle of all of it like we are right now. But it's hard, especially during the rainy season. These storms roll in, and sometimes it takes more time to get where you want to go and you get caught. So I know a couple of hunters just got killed that way just this week in the US. Now, I was going to talk about falls. Here's a huge tree here that's down. I'm going to have some cut marks in here to try and help us out. Okay. So, very slippery, lots of stuff that you can trip and fall on. Luckily there's not a ton of cliffs, although there are a couple. So I wouldn't worry as much about giant falls like in the Southwest United States, for example, where you have cliffs all over, although it's possible. But you could roll an ankle, break an ankle, you know, something that's going to make it really hard to go and hike 12 miles back up out of here.
this one?
Yes, it could be. What species does that say? The green mountain no?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Pointed snout, model lime green coloration, lighter markings on side of the head, dewlap, moderate size, pale yellow in both sexes. Rare and only in South Talamanca mountain range. It's only here.
Starting to come down now. Again. At least you have a pretty good idea about what time it's going to start. In the morning it was clear, and then after it had time to build up, it started coming at about 12 o'clock on the dot.